So today this video is going to cover the LEQ, which can seem a little daunting at first, but when we break it down using this graphic organizer, you're going to see they're actually pretty easy as long as you just follow kind of a formula to make them. So the LEQ is going to be made up of usually 5 paragraphs. I would start with that, follow this organizer at the beginning to really get all the points. And your first paragraph is going to be made up of this section right here, which will be your intro paragraph, including a grabber, your contextualization, your thesis statement. So this here, the context and the thesis statement, are both a point on the rubric. So you have to include both these things to be able to get your point. Our second paragraph is going to be our body paragraph right here. So this is 1. Then we have our second paragraph over here, 2, our first body paragraph. Second body paragraph here is our third paragraph. Fourth paragraph will be analysis and reasoning. And then this one down here will be our fifth paragraph, which is your conclusion. So your points come from, like I said, your context and your thesis statement. There's a point there. And then there's a point for these two here and here. So wherever green X's are, that's a point on the rubric. There's also 2 points down here in this area. So to start off, your grabber, you just want some kind of fact, something interesting that you've learned that helps lead you into the contextualization. It can really be whatever you want. It can be a story that you learned. It can be something that I said. It really doesn't matter. The important part is the contextualization. You have to give your audience some context about what is going on during the time that you're asking the question. If they don't have any context, they really can't frame the evidence that you have. I always say, treat me like I'm an idiot and I have no clue what this event is. I have no clue what's going on, so you have to tell me. So if it's about World War II, maybe you want to talk about the alliances, the time period, where it's occurring. If it's about industrialization, same thing. What's going on at this time period? What is the world like? What does it look like? What's the date? The most important part is the thesis statement. Your thesis needs to be testable. It needs to be able to be proven by the facts and evidence that you will give. So when you're doing your thesis statement, you want it to be specific enough that it answers the whole question, but not so specific that you've limited yourself. That's why I kind of made this part a triangle. You're going from very, very broad to specific with your thesis statement. One thing that you can do is you can just look at the question that I give you, answer the question, and then turn it into a 1-sentence thesis statement. Do not use pronouns in it, and don't just restate the question. If you've restated the question anywhere, I would delete your thesis statement and start back over. So your next 2 points will come from your body paragraphs. Technically, you only need 2 pieces of evidence to get this first X here, which is the first point. But we're going to give 2 body paragraphs with each with 2 pieces of evidence in them. That way, you have 4 pieces of evidence, so if 2 of them are wrong, you can still get this point. So what you do is you give your 2 pieces of evidence that support a topic sentence that proves your thesis. So you're using your body paragraphs to prove your thesis statement. Remember, it's testable, so the stuff that shows that it is right is going to be here. The second X, the second point, is going to be you arguing that your pieces of evidence prove your thesis statement. One piece of advice, you should try and make your evidence in here related. So you want piece of evidence 1 and piece of evidence 2 to kind of be related to each other. Piece of evidence 1 here and piece of evidence 2 here, you want those also related to each other. So one of my classes had an example of when they were talking about the Industrial Revolution, they put something like medical advancements and farming advancements here, and then the machine gun and the steam engine here. They're kind of related to each other, so you can form them into a coherent argument to then prove your thesis statement. If you do that, you'll get your 2 points from this area, and you can move on to the final one. Analysis and reasoning is by far the hardest thing to do. And this is where you kind of tie everything together and you prove that everything goes together to prove your statement. You're going to bring in outside information to do this. So you can talk about themes. Like if we're talking about industrialization, you could talk about the theme of needing resources and how the Industrial Revolution is kind of like World War II, where countries were fighting over resources. Or you can compare and contrast the Russian Revolution and the French Revolution, or World War I to World War II, and bring in outside information to prove that everything you're saying is true. This is what historians do, where you're looking across historical lines to prove what you're saying and that your thesis is the right thesis. If you need more help with this, you can come see me one-on-one and we can look at analysis and reasoning. But my advice is the only way to get really better at this is to just do it and go for it. It in the rubric, it says that it doesn't need to be perfect. So if you at least try, you're probably going to get the first point. If you get it right, you're probably going to get the second point. So that's the total of our 6 points. So why do we even have a conclusion? You want to have a conclusion just to wrap up your essay, say why it's important, maybe why it connects, and why it's going to affect the future events. But one thing we do, and it's very, very critical right here, I want you to restate your thesis. And I want you to restate it in a new and different way. Don't just write exactly what you wrote up here. Write it in a new way. So if I couldn't find your thesis up here, now I can find your thesis down here, and you can get that point. Again, we're kind of adding in a redundancy, a safety valve. So if you accidentally forgot your thesis here, you have it here and you can get the point. If you need any more help with this, let me know, and we'll go over it one-on-one. But I think this will be a good start for you to be able to write your first LEQ.